So yeah, Tiffany, we went to like a brunch not that long ago, and Tiffany was like, surprise, I'm bringing my camera, while I was at the gym on my way to the freaking brunch. So then she took pictures of me and I looked like a toad, but that's all.
That's okay.
I should have known it was going to happen again today, but alas, I did not.
I'm consistent.
So anyway, I thought I'd get up here and chat pretty quickly about how I came into development, like my journey here. I won't start at the super beginning, like birth, but I just wanted to talk to you about like what happened along the way that got me to this point. And yeah, so if you want to follow me, here's all of my stuff. DeVoe is my middle name, so at Shanelle DeVoe on everything, and then on LinkedIn it's at Shanelle Webster or /in/Shanelle Webster, and then on GitHub it's Shanelle Webster too. I didn't put that. But I do a lot of stuff on GitHub, so if you want to
a lot of stuff.
It's like a good amount, I would say, not like a lot. Yeah. Okay, cool. So a few things about me. So I will ask you guys, and I will have you raise your hands about 2 truths and a lie, like which one you think is a lie. So number 1, I can deadlift 200 pounds. Number 2, I named my dog after Lil Wayne. And number 3, I once flew on the same plane with Lil Xan. So raise your hand if you think number 1's a lie. Good. No. If you like, I try not to tell people too many things about me because like the more they find out, the more like they're like, what? But yeah, I'm super bro, so I go to the gym all the time, 5 days a week, and lift. Yeah, I did name my dog after Lil Wayne. Oh, I didn't even ask. So yeah. My dog's name is Wheezy. So he's the cutest little guy, and I named him that because I got him like the weekend I went to a Lil Wayne concert. So I always listen. I'm a big rap fan. If you ever want to chat about rap,
Were you once on a plane with someone famous?
no. Like honestly, like I'm so bad at lying that my husband had to help me like come up with a good lie. I once was like on a Jurassic Park adventure, and he's like, that's so specific. So anyway, okay, cool. So, and you're also gonna get to follow me on my hair journey as we go. So, I went to West Texas A&M University, and I picked like what I thought would be the easiest major, quote unquote, because I really wanted to be a mechanical engineer, and it was just too much effort. Like, I liked the math, but I didn't want to actually do the calculus every day. So I switched to psychology, which I still find super interesting and fascinating. But I think, like in college, a lot of times people try to sell you on this dream, like do what you love and you can make money, and that's not true. So, yeah, so that's what ended me up in my next role, which, so along the way I put in a couple of like do's and don'ts of things that I learned along the way. So yeah, do stick with the major you like, even if it's hard, and then don't goof off and hope it works out. Before I get too deep, is there anyone here who's like just starting their journey on like development? Like, raise your hand up high. Claire.
I've never been a performance engineer before. I'm switching to SRE.
Okay. I mean, like, is there anyone here that's never like worked as an engineer that is just starting? Okay, cool. Take a quick second and applaud for me. It's a wonderful career path, but I'll get into that. Yeah, so that's what got me into this second job, my first professional job, which was I did family development at Panhandle Community Services in Amarillo, Texas, which is where I'm from. It's a social work position, so I worked with low-income families and helped them move out of poverty. And so I was really super passionate about it. I loved my job. Every single day I went and helped families, like I got to know them. They invited me to their homes for like holidays and birthday parties and school events, and I got really involved with their family and helped them, like the mom or the dad or whoever it was, like go to college or whatever they wanted to do to get their family onto like a living wage situation. But it just didn't pay enough money. So I decided to go to grad school. And I got my master's in business administration. There I did, they have like a lot of IT management programs and courses as well. So I got involved with a lot of people that did that, which is kind of what sparked my interest in development. I didn't get too deep into it during that time, but that was kind of what interested me. So while I was doing this, the nonprofit that I worked at allowed me to do like a lot of their social media and website stuff. So that kind of got me interested as well. So, oh yeah, so another do's and don'ts. So during grad school, a couple of things that I learned was do listen to every single piece of advice that someone gives you. You don't always have to follow it, but it's always good to stay open to people's advice. And then add them on social media and keep in touch. Like, I'll get into networking later, but super important because I still have a lot of people that I met in grad school that can connect me with jobs in Denver or whatever, and I keep in touch with them. And then don't goof off and hope it works out. Yeah, so that's kind of what I did. So yeah, that's what I got me into digital advertising. Live picture of me while I was working there. So when I started doing the website stuff, so in Amarillo, Texas is not very big. So they have like one digital advertising agency, which here there's a ton, but there's only one, and it just happens to be run by the newspaper. So the newspaper basically is failing, like everywhere the newspaper is failing. And so they transitioned into selling people like websites and like Google, like digital ads on the internet. So I'm like Google AdWords certified and all that stuff. So I really loved it, but hated like the sales pressure of it. And I also had a really bad boss, but I won't go there. So do learn how to communicate effectively with teammates and customers. That was like a major thing that I learned at this job. All my public speaking skills and interactions came from that job, which was super important to me. And then learn everything there is to know in your position and put all in each day. That was also really important. Even when I hated my job, I still put my 100% in every day. And then I also learned to stick up for myself when things were going astray. Don't let your manager belittle you, and don't stay longer than necessary in a mentally abusive situation. Which I'm assuming a lot of you guys are doing a career change, which is why you're here. So I'm sure some of you can understand. So, I actually worked with my husband at that digital advertising agency. He's a cool guy. I like him. So it was because of him that it allowed me like the financial opportunity to go to a coding boot camp here. And he really is super passionate about like me following my dreams, super supportive husband, and yeah, I wouldn't be here today without him. So yeah, in like January, I made a New Year's resolution. I was going to quit my job. No matter what it took, I was going to save up my money and quit my job. So I started looking into coding and did like free code camp and Code Academy. And this is on New Year's Eve with me and my Mima. So that was 1 year ago in January. So yeah, a couple of things that I didn't do, which I wish that I did, if any of you are like still in the beginning stages, do get involved in the community immediately. Like find a group of people, and I'm so glad you're here, like get involved with these people if you can. But get involved sooner rather than later, and then find a mentor to ask questions, because your learning is going to be so much smoother if you have someone to ask questions. And I'm sure all of you that are kind of further in your journey know that. It's a lot better to like just go ahead and ask. And then practice. Don't copy and paste, which I did all the time, and I'm so sad to admit it. And it really shortcutted my learning, so don't do that. And I had to learn the hard way later on. So I decided to go to Dev Mountain, which is like just down the street from here. This is my cohort on our first Friday. I went home after this and cried. It was so hard because I copied and pasted a lot. Yeah, but I went to Dev Mountain, and it was really an amazing experience, and I met a lot of people there. A couple of things that were especially hard for me was I moved away from my hometown of Amarillo, which I never had left. I lived just down the street from my parents and my grandparents my whole life. I didn't know anyone in Dallas. I have a cousin that lives in Denton, but that's all I knew. I didn't really fit in. My cohort was younger, and I was one of 5 girls, but all the girls were young as well. So I'm not really old, but they were all like 18 and I was like, 26. So there's definitely an age gap. I didn't know how to code or the principles behind coding. I had done my Codecademy stuff, but it took me a while to catch on to like the bigger picture of what was really happening. Like I could solve the like JavaScript toy problems and stuff like that, but I was like, so how does that make a website? Like, what? So it took me a long time to catch on. I was super poor. I worked 2 jobs right before I went to Dove Mountain to save to come, and we didn't have any money. So I was living on like nothing. I didn't catch on quickly. It was like a boys club. There was a group of boys that just they were like the rock stars of the group, and they left us out, like the girls out a lot. So that kind of, I'm sure you probably all know what that feels like. Yeah, I was not younger or single. I also was married, so I was getting married. So yeah, that was hard. And then my family, I won't go into it too much, but my family depends on me a lot, so it was really hard for me to leave my home. So pros and cons of a boot camp. I don't know if any of you are thinking about a boot camp or not, but yeah. So I feel like now looking back, I was super well prepared to go into my job. I felt like I knew the basics of what I need to know to get started at least. Like there's still a lot to learn, but I knew what I needed to know. Emphasis on network, a lot of times, like people always reinforce, like do your networking, like meet people here, like you meet people at the boot camp that you later will have like professional connections with later on. I was fully immersed, so I was there for 13 weeks. I didn't have a choice but to learn to code because I was there 9 to 5, and then I lived there, so I can always ask as many questions, well-carved path, so like this is what you need to do to get a job. Like they told you each step of the way. And then there was mentors there to like help you along the way until you don't give up, that kind of thing. Con list, expensive, super, super expensive. Some lack of creativity, so you don't really get to choose like what you learn there. It's basically like this is what we're learning and you do it. You have your own like creativity within that little bubble, but there's just a lack of like that kind of creativity. Again, boys club, like guys are teachers, guys run the place, so it felt like a little bit like, like you didn't really fit in, like you're kind of like, hey, I want to be your friend, and so anyway, dealing with boys all day in itself, that's annoying.
Yes.
Yeah. Culture shock, so yeah, I'm from a small town, and moving into like a downtown metroplex was like a big deal to me. And then more experienced people have a huge advantage going into a boot camp because they're over there doing like harder things and moving on while you're still learning ABC. So that was hard. Just like my super honest like pros and cons. Like I loved my experience at Dove Mountain, but there are definitely cons to going. Cool. So be nice to everyone, get to know everyone, go to every networking event, even if you're not going to boot camp, super important. Give yourself brain breaks, don't kill yourself, like if you're, not actually kill yourself, but you know what I mean, like kill yourself. Talk to someone if you're feeling out of control, self-care, give it everything you have, like go all in. Don't kind of take a second to think about what you're doing, just give it everything. Ask for help, minimize distractions, and then also do not goof off and hope it works out. Like everything else I did, because I kind of tried to do it at the boot camp too. Don't isolate yourself or copy and paste. I still tried to do it. Don't do it. I still feel like if I would have known like the disadvantage that I was giving myself copy and pasting, I would never have done it in the first place. And don't ask for too much help, and don't be a pest about asking for help. So in the middle of my boot camp, I got married. That should be on the don't list, but I don't feel like that. Yeah, so I got married to my husband. He's a cool guy. Then they hired me on full time once I graduated at my boot camp. So I was what is called a student success manager. I think every boot camp has like some version of that, which is just basically someone to help people like transition through. So I help people like while they were there, like someone to talk to, because boot camps can be very like mentally taxing. And then also I help them get job ready on their way out. So I miss Jordan and Laura. Well, you didn't really get to know me, but a couple of people got to know me there from Dove Mountain. So, yeah, so I actually, like, this gave me a big opportunity to, like, grow my network more. It wasn't really about the time I was learning to code, but I was growing my network. And then I got a job as a software engineer at Ambit Energy because I came to this group. Miss Johanna helped me get my job there. So, super important. I'm a full stack developer. I do a lot of stuff on the front end, but I do C# on the back end and then SQL database querying. So, yeah, that's all about my journey. Does anyone have any questions for me or anything like that at all?
So what was the timeline between like getting into bootcamp and getting your first job? And what were you working on?
So in January I started coding, and then I enrolled in what's called, base camp. So it's pre-boot camp in February. So from February to February, I started in February, right? What is today? No, I started in January. So February to January, that's when I changed my life, my career. Yeah, so it was about 1 year.
Well, it lasted a full year though, in terms of you going to boot camp and like getting a job.
Yeah, I probably could have got like a development role sooner if I had not taken the student success job, but I really wanted to do that job, and I really needed some time as well for myself to like grow more as a developer, I thought. So, yeah. Any other questions at all? Cool. Oh.
What's your favorite front-end framework?
Oh my gosh. Roses are red, violets are blue. You knew I would use this opportunity to talk about Vue. Sarah Drasner posted that on Twitter.
That's awesome.
Sure.
You said like your family back in Amarillo depended on you a lot. You made this huge move. It was like huge culture shock. How's your family feel about you now? Like, are they super proud?
Yeah. So at first they did not want me to go. I kind of have a sordid family past, but they were very they would kind of talk down to me about my decision to come here. Like, they thought I would fail. There was no way that you're gonna make it in a big city, downtown Dallas. There's no way. You're emotional, you're forgetful, you're all these things. And so it was really hard for me to get the self-courage to actually just leave. And I actually didn't tell any of them before I left. I just kind of did it.
Wait, explain. Were you just like, bye, I'm moving on?
Yeah.
Did they just try to come over and visit one day and you were gone?
Yeah. So
That's the kind of thing I've always dreamed of doing with my family. I daydream about it sometimes.
So if we want to have a mental health moment,
Yes.
I essentially, so I have this really big fear of telling people that I succeeded in doing something, just in case it ends up not working out. So I started going, I got into the boot camp and I got accepted and I made it all the way through all the requirements. So it was at that point, a week and a half before I was slated to start the boot camp, that I was like, hey, I figured it out, I'm leaving. We were meeting at Olive Garden and I was like, yes, I'm going to Dallas. And they were not happy, but I think that they're happier now. My grandmother depended on me a lot at home, so someone else had to take over that role for me. But
I think that's just so interesting generationally. I feel like the older generations do not understand boot camp.
yeah.
They're just kind of what about college? What is this? Some don't even understand the software industry. They just don't get it. And so it's a common theme is my parents weren't sure about this, or they didn't really understand it.
Yeah, so I think for me it was a little bit easier because I have my master's degree, and it was still really hard for me to find a job that I liked and I also made money. I made pretty good money at the digital advertising sales position, but I hated it, and my family knew I hated it, and I couldn't find a job of that caliber that would pay me a equal amount. So I think that at that time they were like, okay, I guess. My brother even was like, you're gonna do more school, and he even made some comment about me trying to get out of things and going to school, which might be true. But yeah.
Over here.
Yeah. Sure.
What about your interview process with Ambit? Like, did you have coding challenges? Did you, what kind of, tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's a good one. I actually really loved Ambit's interview. Why are you laughing back there?
I'm laughing at Johanna, who's like, yes, good question, please, Shanelle.
For everyone else, are people aware that they work in the same place?
Yes.
Oh yeah, Shanelle and Johanna work
I feel
together.
like that would kind of help this make sense. Okay.
Yeah, she helped me get the job there. So, yeah, I loved the interview. I've been on a lot of tech interviews, and so if anyone has any questions about that, I'd love to talk to you about that. And I did it in my student success role job, is I kind of help people get through their interviews. So I know the scoop on a lot of like tech interviews. So that helped me get through interviews. But so with Ambit, I had a phone interview, which is pretty typical. Phone interview with HR, which they asked me HRE questions, and I'm actually like really like good friends with the HR person now. I love her a lot. She's really cool. And then I moved forward to like an in-person interview, which was a whiteboarding interview. They asked me a whole bunch of. They didn't really ask me specific what is a function or whatever. I don't know, whatever they asked. But they talked to me about my projects, like what I did with those projects. How did you make this happen in this project? Like that's why I feel like a portfolio is super important, so that you have something to talk about instead of being on the spot of like tech questions you may not know the answer to. Because I got out of a lot of tech questions by just talking about things I did in my projects. And then I did a whiteboarding session over just basically like how would you build a full stack application, and it was like a specific one that he wanted me to talk about. So it was
What was the game, Shanelle, that you made you build?
It was tic-tac-toe.
Okay.
Like how would you go about building a tic-tac-toe application like with two players on different computers? So I had to talk about like, you know, like what would I put on the front end? Like what kind of thing, like what kind of data would I store on the front end? How would I get it to my back end? How would I store it in the database? How would I then get that information to the other person's computer? And I really feel like it's super important to highlight that no one really cares if you know the right answers to the questions, right? They care like your thought process. Like, are they reaching out when they don't know? Like, what do they think about when they're thinking about these things? Like, things like that. Nobody cares if I know how to build a tic-tac-toe game. You know what I mean? So, and then I had like a panel interview after that for my final interview with people who I guess were deciding of who they wanted to put me, what team they wanted to put me on. So I ended up getting put on the customer information system team, CIS team, which is essentially there's not a lot of front end positions there, so it's one of the teams with front end. So yeah.
What type of personal projects did you have going into like your applying process?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. At Dead Mountain, or at any boot camp, they tell you like kind of what projects you should have. So I had all those little projects. Like I had one, basically just an application that it didn't have a database. It's called NoDB, is what they called it. And so I was just interacting with an API on my front end and getting data, manipulating it, and editing it, and all that, like full stack, but without a database. I guess so it's not full stack, whatever. But and then I had it was my big full stack project, which was like a digital file keeping system for my old social work job. And then me and my ex-supervisor worked on like a really fancy to-do app, which I could go into more details on that, but it was really nice. So I got to learn what a cron was. I don't know if you know what a cron is. Okay, she's my hype girl. I'm her hype girl too. If you're in the Slack, you know. I'm like, yeah, Johanna. Anyway, so I learned what a cron was, and I feel like they were really impressed with like my knowledge of like external like technology. So I think that's the most important thing to have in projects in your portfolio. So like I would say a full stack, or I don't know what kind of position you're trying to get. I think front end, but try to at least manipulate data with an API, and then also like do external technologies that you don't know anything about that maybe not everybody else knows everything about too. Like most people can build a React application, but can you integrate this technology with it? Things like that. Any other questions?
How did you evaluate the culture of the companies?
So, there's a lot of of controversy in this, and I think that it's really important just to know like what you need out of a company. And I really like the structure of a larger company. Some people really love the startup life, and I don't think that they could ever like go work for Ambit, which is a big company. But I really enjoy the structure and the just like a big group of people that's all developers and like going into my big building downtown, and I like that. But I think it just is important to know what you want out of a company, and if whatever it is something you want, at least give the other companies a chance, because you never know. So, and then the people that I actually knew, I knew people that worked there, so I actually knew what it was like. So, and that's another thing that I think that I would do, is also reach out to people that work there via LinkedIn or whatever and ask.
Yes. What was your like biggest shock transitioning from boot camp to your first real dev job?
So I've only been working there a month. Like, I think the biggest shock is just like how all of the things work together. Like, it's a big company again, so like there's so many different like applications that all like feed off of other people's services and things like that. So trying to like dig through the big files and stuff like that, and like knowing like which team is responsible for what and how to get that, like the communication aspect of it is really like, that was my biggest like but I mean you get over it, but yeah.
So I come from a startup and it was an untraditional background, and so I have problems trying to figure out what it looks like in a big company and where I would fit in. What would anyone suggest on how do you figure that out from like an outsider perspective without having to go into a company and just feel your way?
Well, every company is going to be different. And I think, like, I don't know what Alchemy is like, but I feel like it's kind of bigger, Claire.
Yeah.
It's kind of.
It's
Did you
just
listen? So I don't know what Alchemy is like. It's bigger.
I was posting us on Instagram.
No, you're good. But I would say that it's like, Alchemy is more like a startup company, I feel like, just like from the outside looking in.
Yeah, Alchemy's culture is startup-y. We're dangerously close to corporate America as we approach 500 employees. But I've worked at companies that had 300 employees and were the company from Office Space.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You can't really know until
You're in it.
at least talk to some. I would like, LinkedIn is my favorite thing, because before any interview I always message people on LinkedIn about the positions and like, what is it like there? Like, can you tell me more about it? And
Like
I'll-
randos? You
yeah,
message randos?
I
Okay.
find the company.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta do that.
Yeah, all the
So
time.
on the interview panel, there were no women. Like, they were just gonna have me go through like you after you after you, and I'm like, okay, I need to talk to a female. That's just like a thing I have. Like, gotta talk to one. I'm gonna find one on LinkedIn and talk to them. And then having like a really like good thing. So message randos.
Okay.
Like,
And then pay it forward. Like for random messages, you like.
The internet's
sure.
not scary. Like, meet people.
You
yeah,
met total strangers on the internet tonight.
It's true.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a new thing for me, so I'm
Embrace it. Embrace it.
Yeah. It's one of those new things, you just keep going, you just keep doing it because you know it's gonna help, but you're like, this is fucking scary.
It is.
It is.
The first time I told an Uber, and I was like, oh, might die tonight.
Yeah. So that's like, whenever I was teaching job prep at Dove Mountain, the boot camp, like that's a big thing that people are like, I do not want to message people on LinkedIn. It's freaking weird. And I'm like, just do it though. But like the good thing is I have like tangible proof that I'm like, hey, look, I messaged this rando on LinkedIn and they got me a phone interview. Like, it works. Like,
Okay.
so if you just message them, most of the time they'll be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that again? Sorry.
Most of the time they'll be honest, like
okay.
whatever, like if you're like, hey, what's the deal with this company? Like, what's it like? They'll say, they have problems with this, whatever. So,
Okay.
and if nothing else, like you made a connection. So that person's gonna move on in a year or two, and then you'll have a history with that person, you know?
Yeah. LinkedIn is a much different culture than like Facebook or like Twitter or whatever. Like, people expect you to like reach out to strangers on there. Like, nobody feels bothered. like you're not like intruding on someone's space.
Yeah.
You have to kind of like separate that from like social media. It's not the same.
Everyone on LinkedIn is there to network.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone wants to know other people.
Okay,
So, adding somebody, and then like I've had so many just random conversations with people, and I've literally had people tell me we only hire senior like developers, and like we have nothing for you, right? So like it's just, but then also like Shanelle has, like I got me an in-person interview just because I messaged him. He was like, oh yeah, well come on down next week. And I was like, wait, what?
Okay.
Right? But like it happens.
I know, and then she had to message me and say you were right.
I did. Shanelle.
And also, if you're like, what do I tell these people when I message them? I have a YouTube video about going on LinkedIn, finding people, and then crafting a message. It's like a template that you can send to people.
Awesome.
Check it out on Do that.
Women Code DFW, you should tweet that later.
Oh,
You should tweet that.
Hold on.
Tweet it now.
She's on Instagram. I might as well just put it over to my Twitter account.
This Twitter.
That was Tiffany with a T. I'm just kidding.
So yeah, anything else? Okay, if you're too embarrassed to ask me up here, I will be around. But yeah, keep coming back to these meetups, because I swear, like I was telling a couple other girls, these are the best ones. I've been to like every single meetup in Dallas to check it out, and these are the best ones, so I always recommend it.
Thank you.